Meghan Markle's entire business operation is built on something she signed in writing saying she wouldn't use. That's not the tabloid take. That's the actual legal situation. And right now, someone specifically confirmed to the Daily Beast what's going to happen when William becomes king. And it's not complicated. Let me back up because none of this makes sense without understanding the Sandringham Agreement first. January 2020. Meghan and Harry sit down with Queen Elizabeth at Sandringham. They negotiate their exit terms. It gets documented, signed, published on the official royal website where it still is. The deal is straightforward. You don't use your HR titles. Not on Instagram, not in business, not anywhere. In exchange, you keep the Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles for yourself. You walk away with your dignity. That was literally what was written down. Both parties signed it. Fast forward to April 2025. Meghan posts a letter from Ukraine's vice president to her Instagram stories. Just posts it. Unedited, no caption saying the diplomatic address was just courtesy or that the title was technically incorrect. Just the words, Your Royal Highness, sitting right at the top of a commercial social media platform where millions of followers see it. A source close to Prince William didn't hold back when talking to the Daily Beast about this. The quote was basically, you'd have to be an idiot to believe she didn't know exactly what she was doing, posting that unedited to her stories. But that Instagram post wasn't the only time this happened. Around the same time, podcast host Jaime King got a personal gift basket from Meghan. The thing is, it was addressed using the HR title. This wasn't a letter from a diplomat doing what diplomats do. This was Meghan personally sending something commercially and putting the title on it. The one she agreed in writing not to use in any context. Then Netflix. And this one is honestly the most documented because it's not a letter someone else wrote and Meghan just reposted. It's not a gift basket that could theoretically be interpreted a bunch of different ways. This is Meghan on camera on a commercial streaming platform watched by tens of millions of people in her own voice on permanent record. When Mindy Kaling called her Meghan Markle during the filming, Meghan stopped her and corrected her. Literally corrected a celebrity into using the title on Netflix. She said something like, "It's so funny that you keep saying Meghan Markle. You know I'm Sussex now." A woman who signed a formal agreement not to commercially use her royal identity, correcting someone on a streaming platform that goes to like 200 million households. That doesn't fade. That doesn't get reframed as miscommunication. So you've got 3 documented incidents, Instagram stories to millions of followers, a personal gift sent commercially, Netflix footage in her own voice. Those are not allegations. Those are documentable facts on platforms that are still there. The reason this matters legally is something lawyers have a specific term for: material misrepresentation. The foundational claim that a commercial arrangement was made on turns out to be legally invalid. And right now, the industry has already handed down its own verdict, and the numbers are kind of insane. In 2020, Netflix signed a deal with Meghan and Harry. The reported number was around $100 million. The pitch was straightforward: royal access, royal storytelling, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex bringing the monarchy to a global audience. For a while, the numbers made sense. Subscribers followed. Content performed. Then March 2026 happens and Netflix just terminates the partnership. No dramatic announcement. No public thing about creative differences. Just clean. Over. Industry insiders inside Netflix described what happened in 4 words: we're done with them. Before that, Spotify had a reported multi-million-dollar podcast deal. The kind of deal that should produce years of content if it works out. What it actually produced was 1 season. 1. When it was over, Bill Simmons, the Spotify executive overseeing it, didn't send a polite goodbye email. He went on record and called them frauds. Not disappointing. Not a creative mismatch. Frauds? That word came from inside the building. Then in April 2026, Penguin Random House. This is the same publisher that turned Harry's memoir into a global bestseller. These guys had every single commercial reason to keep working with Meghan and Harry. They knew the Sussex brand had sell-through, but they let a reported $20 million book deal expire. No renewal. Sources from both sides said they'd burned the bridge, with the publisher specifically feeling financially burned by what had been promised versus what had been delivered. So think about what just happened. $100 million from Netflix. Gone. A multi-million Spotify deal. Gone. A $20 million book deal. Gone. 3 of the biggest companies in their respective industries all arrived at the same conclusion within months of each other. This isn't a rough patch. This isn't bad timing. This is a verdict. And every single deal was built on the same thing: the Sussex name. The royal identity, the Duchess brand. That was what made the business logic work. Strip that title permanently and legally, and the foundation those contracts were built on doesn't just weaken, it disappears. The interesting part is that the person who handled Meghan's early styling and was basically in all the key moments, Jessica Mulroney, was there for the royal wedding, the baby shower, royal tours. Multiple sources described her as Meghan's most trusted confidant during those years. Then, in June 2020, Jessica gets into a public dispute with a Black influencer. Meghan cuts contact immediately. 9 years of close professional confidence gone the moment it became a liability. A source told Page Six that the controversy gave Meghan the excuse she was apparently waiting for to cut Jessica off completely. Nike Pretty was Meghan's best friend since age 2. Like actual childhood friends. They went on European holidays together when they were 15. Sleepovers. The whole thing. 30 years of shared history. Nike was Meghan's maid of honor at her first wedding to Trevor Englison in 2011. She was there through the marriage, through the divorce, the whole arc. Then the royal wedding to Harry in 2018 happens. Nike doesn't get invited, no falling out first, no conversation where you'd at least know what went wrong. Just complete silence. Nike eventually spoke to the press years later and said Meghan was very calculated in the way she handled people and relationships. Once she decides you're not part of her life, she can be very cold. That specific language, calculated and cold, kept coming up from multiple people in her circle who had gotten close and then been cut off without explanation. Piers Morgan met Meghan in 2016. They exchanged messages, met for drinks in London. That same evening, she met Harry at a party. Morgan described what happened next with basically zero filter. That was the last I ever heard from Meghan Markle. Just like that. Cut off without warning or explanation. What's interesting about all of this is that it's not people who betrayed Meghan first and then went to the press. It's the opposite. These are people who were left quietly without explanation, without a conversation that years of friendship or professional confidence should have earned. And when they finally talked about it publicly, they used this careful, measured language. Not like they were selling a story, like they were genuinely hurt and had spent a long time trying to understand what actually happened to them. Now, here's where the origin story becomes important because it ties directly into everything that follows. For 20 years, Meghan had been telling the same story about herself. When she was 11 years old, she saw a Procter & Gamble commercial that said women all over America were fighting greasy pots and pans. She said she was outraged. So she sat down and wrote letters to Hillary Clinton, to P&G, to senators, and according to Meghan, it worked. P&G changed the commercial. Hillary Clinton personally wrote her back. An 11-year-old girl changed corporate America. She told this story at the United Nations. She told it at the One Young World Summit. She told it in her Vanity Fair profile. She was still telling it in Colombia in 2024. 2 decades. Same story. The cornerstone of her entire public identity, the girl who saw injustice, picked up a pen, and won. Vanity Fair's fact-checkers went looking for evidence. They went directly to P&G. They consulted advertising historians. What they found was nothing. They couldn't verify that she ever received a personal reply from Hillary Clinton. No letter, no record. Nothing from Clinton's office confirming it. So they pulled the story from the article entirely. They just took it out because they couldn't confirm it was real. Then her own father weighed in. Thomas Markle, in his 2020 documentary, said on camera that he thought Meghan was part of a letter-writing campaign of sorts. The story about her single-handedly changing the ad may have been a little embellished. So it wasn't a lone activist changing corporate America. It was a student doing a class assignment that got increasingly embellished over 20 years in front of global audiences. Meghan's own PR team knew this was a problem. They hired journalists who specifically chose not to include the P&G story in her official media materials. Not because it was old news, because it had become a liability to circulate. The people paid to protect her reputation concluded that the story she'd been telling publicly for 2 decades was no longer safe to include in official material sent to press. The staff situation is where the professional operation tells a different story than the public narrative. Between 2020 and 2026, 18 people left Meghan's operation. 18 documented departures. 3 per year, on average, not anonymous sources, not tabloid speculation, people with names, with careers, with professional reputations they had every reason to protect. They left anyway. Samantha Cohen spent 17 years working for the British royal family before joining Meghan as her private secretary in 2018. This was someone who understood royal service at the highest level and had the track record to prove it. The plan was for her to stay 6 months, help Meghan find her footing, then hand off to a permanent replacement. She ended up staying 18 months because they couldn't find anyone willing to take the job permanently. When they finally identified a replacement, the palace literally flew that person to Africa to shadow Cohen on a royal tour so they could get trained. The replacement quit while still in Africa before the tour was even finished. Samantha Cohen herself confirmed this in 2024 when she spoke to the Herald's Sun. She was one of 10 staff members formally interviewed by Buckingham Palace as part of an independent bullying investigation, a review privately funded by Queen Elizabeth herself. The findings were never made public. The changes that followed were implemented quietly without any announcement. But the fact that a sitting monarch chose to fund an independent investigation into her own grandson's household is not a small thing. That only happens when the people with the most information and the most to lose have concluded that there's a real problem that requires an official response. The specific pattern of what people said when they did speak, after long delays in measured language, that's not the pattern of people who left casually. That's the pattern of people who understood they were going on record about something serious. What's wild is how consistent this pattern is across different parts of her life. The professional operation, the friend group, the high-profile relationships, the same mechanism, close, then cut off. No conversation, no explanation. Just removed. The Urban Dictionary actually has a word for it now. Marled. It means to be completely abandoned by someone after you've played a meaningful role in their life. The fact that a dictionary entry exists because the pattern is that recognizable and that consistent tells you more than any single story could. So you've got 3 separate operations, all showing the same behavior. Her professional staff, 18 people leaving over 6 years. Her friend circle, people who were in her life for decades getting cut off without explanation. And her professional relationships, people like Jessica Mulroney and Piers Morgan. And underneath all of it is this origin story that even Vanity Fair couldn't verify and that her own father called embellished when he had the chance to be honest about it. The very first story she ever told about herself publicly, the thing the entire Meghan Markle brand was built on, didn't survive a fact check. So let's actually talk about what happens next, because that's where all of this leads. The Sussex brand was never really about Meghan. It was about 2 words in front of her name. Duchess of Sussex. That's what opened the doors. That's what made Netflix write a 9-figure check. That's what got her on the stage at the United Nations. Not her television resume, not the P&G story that Vanity Fair couldn't verify and her own father called embellished. The title. 2 words she agreed in writing not to use commercially and then systematically used as the commercial foundation for every major deal she entered into in the years that followed. Harry was born a prince. He's the son of a king, the grandson of a queen. Whatever happens to his titles, he's constitutionally and historically part of the House of Windsor. He has a floor. There's always going to be something there for him because he was born into it. Meghan Rachel Markle is from Los Angeles. Her father was a lighting director. The title Duchess of Sussex was a courtesy title given through marriage by royal prerogative because she happened to marry the right man at the right time. It was never hers by birth. It was never hers by right. It was given. And what is given by royal prerogative can be removed the same way. A source close to Prince William confirmed to the Daily Beast exactly what will happen when William becomes king. The quote was basically, "There is no way King William will stand for this. The titles will simply be removed when he is king. A way will be found. Not a threat, not palace gossip. A confirmed position stated on the record by a named source. When the letter's patent is issued and the titles are removed officially and permanently, every business arrangement Meghan has entered into since 2020 faces a retroactive question. What exactly did every business partner, every retailer, every investor sign up for? What were they actually sold? Did they enter into agreements with Meghan Markle, the former actress, or with the Duchess of Sussex, an identity that was never supposed to be available for commercial use by signed agreement and which will eventually not exist legally? That question has no comfortable answer. Unlike a bad headline, it doesn't fade with the next news cycle. It compounds, it accumulates. It moves from corporate strategy discussions toward the kind of conversation that eventually finds its way into legal filings. Material misrepresentation doesn't require a specific action to trigger it. It simply requires that the foundational claim upon which a commercial arrangement was made turns out to be legally invalid. And then someone standing inside those corporate structures decides to ask the question in a formal setting. Tom Bauer has written 2 books on this exact subject. Revenge came out in 2022. Betrayal came out in 2026. 80 sources across both books. And in all that time, with Meghan's lawyers doing what they do, which is actively pursuing publications that print things she contests, Bauer has not faced a single successful legal challenge. Not one. For someone whose legal team has a well-documented track record of going after publications, that silence around Bauer's specific reporting is significant. It's not just that he's thorough. It suggests that the specific documents and specific sources he's working from are solid enough that challenging him would be more dangerous for the person challenging him than for Bauer. The people who signed those documents know where they are. Tom Bauer knows where they are too. The Netflix material exists. The Instagram posts exist. The gift basket documentation exists. The staff departures are all documented with names and dates. The bullying investigation was real. 10 people were interviewed. A sitting queen funded it. The findings were never released publicly, but the investigation itself is a matter of record. You don't launch something like that unless there's something substantial underneath it. So when William becomes king and the letters patent gets issued, Meghan loses the Duchess title. The jam can get a new label, the Instagram grid can be updated, the product line can be rebranded. But the paper trail doesn't change. The signed Sandringham agreement doesn't change. The Netflix footage doesn't change. The 10 witnesses from the bullying investigation don't change. The 18 staff departures don't change. And if the P&G origin story, the very first story she ever told about herself publicly, the cornerstone of her entire brand, couldn't survive a fact check at Vanity Fair and was described by her own father as a class assignment that got embellished over 20 years. Then everything built on top of it is sitting on a foundation that's already been compromised. The Jam brand might survive without the Duchess title. The Instagram presence might adapt, the lifestyle content might continue under a different name, but the commercial logic that justified a $100 million Netflix deal, a multi-million-dollar Spotify contract, and a $20 million book deal from Penguin Random House was always predicated on one thing: that the person selling the product was the Duchess of Sussex. Not Meghan Markle, not a lifestyle influencer, the Duchess. Once that word gets removed, you're asking every business partner who signed on to explain to their shareholders why they paid 9 figures for access to a title that turned out to be unavailable. Samantha Cohen spent 17 years in the royal service. She understood the institution from the inside. She understood what agreements mean when they're signed by both parties. The staff who left understood it. Nike pretty understood it. When Meghan cut them off, they understood that the relationship was transactional and they were no longer useful. That's the pattern. When something or someone stops being advantageous, they get removed. Clean. Final. No negotiation. The institution that Meghan spent 5 years publicly dismantling has one move left. And it's the exact same move she's been deploying all along. No negotiation, no appeal, no reframe available. Just the quiet and permanent removal of 2 words that made the commercial operation possible. The clock is running on the Sussex brand in a way that no product rebrand or social media strategy can actually address. The title will come off, the agreement is on the official website, the violations are documented. The legal framework that follows from all 3 of those things isn't a theory. It's a process that begins when William takes the throne and doesn't require anyone's cooperation or consent to complete. It just happens. The institution removes you the same way Meghan removes people when they stop being useful. Cold, clean, total, final.